What's up, peers, and welcome to the World Crypto Network. You're back at the Breaking Bitcoin conference in Amsterdam. We are joined here by Boris. What's up?
Yeah, how you doing, man?
Oh,
Cool.
fantastic. How do you like the conference so far?
Yeah, it's awesome. I mean, I've been talking to people that I've been listening to for years and meeting them finally here at this convention. And it's pretty cool.
Yeah, right, absolutely. Many smart people here.
Yep.
A lot of good talks. They are being recorded. And of course, then also very good conversations on the side.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's some ideas I've been walking around with, talking to people about, and it's interesting. I mean, if you want to talk to someone about Lightning and really get some meaningful feedback, come to a conference like this. It's great.
Yes, absolutely. A lot of brain power and all working together is really, it's just nice. It's quite powerful to have this group of peers to work with.
And I hear there's a gold nodal in the building somewhere.
There is, the Nautilus here.
Awesome.
And I mean, Nautilus really, it's nice to have a plug-and-play box.
Dude, we've been having this conversation on Twitter. You know, I wanted to get a Lightning node and I installed used an old PC and put Ubuntu on it. And then I realized I kept turning it off because it made too much noise. Then I bought the Raspberry Pi for it. I used the root stall, the Raspberry Blitz.
Perfect.
I think it's a German project.
Yeah.
It's really good.
It's fantastic.
I love it. I mean, the amount of work that root stall is putting into it is insane. But I mean, the world is being taken over by the nodal. I mean, these guys are really insane what they do, and the box is beautiful. And I've noticed in your podcast, it's like placed strategically behind you, so you can see you have the nodal. Yeah, I love that. I need to get that. I'm still saving up for it. But,
It is, like, the metal box is cool. It's a no bullshit design, just black box. It's like all the Bitcoin stuff on here.
Yeah.
Like magic happening right here. This is your tool of self-defense for financial sovereignty.
Yeah.
Right? It's fantastic. It really is.
But I like it that why is that important? That the design of your Lightning node is beautiful. I mean, I've got the same thing with the Samurai wallet, the Dojo. It's red and it's got a samurai on it. I'm like, yeah, man, this is an extension of my Bitcoin identity. I need this in my life.
Yep.
And that's why it's important. I mean, you need a nice Lightning. You don't just need any Lightning node. You need one that looks good.
Absolutely, absolutely. And now put two things together. How about a nodal with a samurai theme, and with all the samurai stuff happening on there, because it's possible.
Have you seen it already? Have you seen it working? Yeah, you have it.
This stuff is here. Like we
Is
have
it here?
it. Yes,
Really?
yes,
I'd
yes,
love
yes.
to see that. Yeah, because I saw that it came out, and because I don't have a nodal, I didn't try it out. But I mean, it makes no sense to buy a dojo, a samurai dojo, a node, and an extra Lightning node or something else. You don't want that. You want one box.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. That's awesome. Yeah, I want to see it.
Yeah, no, the samurai team, we've been working with them, especially Kato Miner, to really make sure that the dojo is actually something that can run on such a hardware. It can also run on a Raspberry Pi, right? It's Libre open source software, so you can install it and run it.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's
Awesome.
absolutely possible.
Yeah, no, that's awesome.
So, but Boris, you're of course also a podcast host, right?
Yep.
And how do you combine being the podcast host with Bitcoin and Lightning?
It's a really difficult question because I've been into Bitcoin for a long time. I was lucky to be introduced to Bitcoin by Bitcoin maximalists in a day. By the time I noticed altcoins, I was already too deep into the Bitcoin space, and I didn't have any. I wasn't part of a bubble where altcoins were actually a thing, so that didn't really resonate for me. So I thought that needed to change. So in 2017, I started a crypto podcast, talked about crypto a lot, and then I quit that because I realized I've lost interest, and it's got to be Bitcoin because that's the only coin that has, or any only project that has any monetary properties, and the only one that stands a chance against the banking sector. And I just had this conversation downstairs. It was with this guy, and he was from Brazil. He's a developer, and he said that as soon as you hear someone about Bitcoin and he's really, really positive, that's a red flag. Because if you're into Bitcoin, you realize you're in a war. And who's positive in a war? That's not possible. So that's, and I thought that was a really interesting perspective. And I mean, I like to explore these themes. I like to talk to people with different points of view about Bitcoin. And I mean, there's an endless world of content, and I like to tell those stories.
Yes, absolutely right. And yeah, it's true that in Bitcoin it is a malicious environment, right? We compete against aggressors, right? That is what we then defend against.
Yeah.
But the beautiful thing with Bitcoin is that it's a tool of self-defense only, right? I don't think it can be used aggressively, right? So therefore, most users, probably all users, use it in a defensive way, so that it's not aggressive. And I think that makes it quite a nice, war or revolutionary thing, because this is actually the peaceful revolution.
Yeah.
Right? This is something that's based only on voluntary action.
Absolutely. I mean, can you imagine the developers or the technical people that will come out of Venezuela in 5 years or in 10 years' time? I mean, these people are experienced, battle-hardened, guerrilla financial warfare veterans, and they're going to enter this space, and they're already using Bitcoin. I was just told the example where people in Brazil go to the border with Venezuela and use set up mesh networks, set up satellite disks, just to help people get access to Bitcoin, to liquidity. It's really, really fascinating.
Yeah, and we need this, right? Bitcoin is really a tool that we can use in these areas.
Yeah.
And that's what it was tailor-made to do.
Yeah, no, absolutely. No, and that's what I like about it. And it's, I think, I mean, we're sitting in the, this is the oldest stock exchange in the world, this building, the building that we're, I mean, I just told you, but I realized, I mean, this is literally the place where the tulip bulbs bubble started. And it's got so much history. And to be honest, we live in this environment where financial guerrilla warfare will probably not become a thing. I mean, I'm not sure, you know. I mean, there might be, I mean, the whole thing might collapse here. But there's a chance that won't happen. There's actually a big chance that won't happen. But if you live in a place that's less financially stable, what's happening there? I mean, like yesterday we got the news that they were going to ban Bitcoin in India, and you would get 10 years of jail time if you were caught like mining or doing something like that. I'm kind of curious what will happen if they really do that. You know, what will people do? What's their next level of defense? What's it going to look like? And I mean, this development process is starting to take place. This is where Bitcoin is going.
Yes, absolutely. But I mean, we had now 10 years to build it and 10 years to strengthen it.
Yeah.
So do you think that we're well prepared?
We will find out. Actually, I think we're very well prepared. I think Bitcoin is really, it's still in its infancy. It's still beta, but actually, I think it's seen some really heavy attacks, like this, like the whole SegWit thing. Like Bitcoin pre-SegWit was just a different beast. It felt like the community was less mature. It felt like, I mean, I was doubting whether SegWit would work, you know, and then look where Bitcoin is now, you know. It's like light years ahead of Bcash. It's just, there's no competition anymore. The whole attack vector is gone. And we're going to see other attack vectors, like we just discussed, the social attack vector, the toxicity. I've seen that in video games. That's a genuine attack vector. That's where the Bitcoin community can be split into two.
Yeah, so you have a lot of background in gaming, and of course your podcast has covered that for a long, long time now.
Yeah.
And so you mentioned that earlier, the toxicity, that this was also the case in gaming, and it really shattered the community here in these aspects. What happened there?
I think, well, what happened, there was a girl, she was a game journalist, she slept with a guy, or had a relation with a guy who was a game developer. They broke up, it was nasty. She started claiming harassment online, and before we know it, there was this discussion about males being sexist when they're developing video games. Girls are always blonde, have big tits in video games, all these stereotypes. And this was true in a sense. The only thing that was not true was the intention with what it was built with. I mean, back in the days when video games were like 8-bit pixels, the only way to distinguish a girl from a guy in a video game was to have big tits and long blonde hair, because otherwise it would be just the same bunch of pixels, you couldn't see it. So that's where it came from. But it got turned into something else, and it was just a new generation of video game developers. They don't have this context, they don't have the background, so they thought like, why this sexist behavior in video games? And I mean, fast forward a couple of years later, the community is absolutely, it's split in two. And if you want to get a job in working in video game productions, this is an issue you have to deal with. I mean, look, I'm too old for the millennial point of view, basically. But I mean, if you're a millennial and you're a game developer, you need to be political correct. Otherwise, there's no job for you. And that's a thing. And I mean, imagine that happening in Bitcoin. This was a really tight community. Everybody's opinion was valued. And someone comes in and says like, okay, you guys are being toxic. That's insane. That's a really, I mean, I remember when I was in high school, I was really an asshole when I was in school, when I was a kid. And I did something and a teacher like said, okay, out of the class, like you have to report or something. And I told him like, the only reason you're saying that is because I'm Jewish. And, and I mean, this guy was just destroyed. And I remember, I mean, up until this day, how his words were framed by me in a different context, and the power of that. And that's what this attack vector is. I mean, this whole social discussion about toxicity and inclusiveness, it's nothing other than someone who made a mistake or is not knowledgeable enough or whatever, is decided to push this button, this one button that sort of changes the context of the entire discussion. And everybody's all of a sudden aware of the fact that his words might hurt someone's feelings. And that's a pretty awkward conversation when you're afraid of hurting someone's feelings. I mean, that's always terrible. And then this whole thing takes over a community. That's an attack factor. That's a genuine attack factor.
And how could we defend against that?
Talk about it. Talk about it for real, and also not acknowledge the victim. How do you say that? Like the cultivation of victimhood, because it's usually a way you can only play this card when you make yourself a victim. If I said, tell you the only reason you do something is because of this and this and that, because the color of my hair, of my skin, or whatever, I mean, it's bullshit. It's a discussion. But if I frame your words or your behavior in this context where you are the aggressor and I'm the victim, it makes the whole conversation very uncomfortable. It's an attack. It's an attack on your integrity, because you were just talking from your genuine opinion, and I make it into something that makes me a victim. So that means that you're an attacker, and that's difficult, and it's socially speaking, it's really disruptive, because it sets people up against each other. Before they were just talking. Now all of a sudden they're set up against each other. And it's pretty powerful.
That is very interesting. And I was on a panel here at Breaking Bitcoin about these social attacks on Bitcoin. Yeah. And a shame that we did not mention this here, but good that we can now. And I think this can be very well tied into the entire methodology of forking, right? Of copying a set of rules, changing it, and then doing a project based on that copy of the rule set. Yeah. Right. That is what many code bases did already. Like Litecoin, for example, is a copy of Bitcoin. Yeah. Right. With rule changes and a new start of the chain. Yeah. Then same with something like Bitcoin Cash, right, where you have the same copy of rule, change of some parameters, and like a split of what is possible to choose from. Yeah. So where do you think that this toxicity and this divide and conquer strategy can come into play in the context of forks?
Actually, I'm really surprised that Roger Ver didn't try this. If he would have made himself the victim of like a toxic campaign or something, his whole fork would have been much more successful. On the other hand, now maybe back then it wasn't really discovered in the way that it's like, And it evolved, you know, after Gamergate, everybody was aware. I mean, there's theories that Trump was elected president because of what happened through Gamergate. Breitbart came out of Gamergate, in a way. A lot of the language that he served on to the presidency was part of this social discussion about equality. And, well, I'm not even sure if it's true, because it's a very big conclusion. But if you take this, if you just should enable this opportunity for people to use it, it's going to be used. So we're going to see a fork of people who leave Bitcoin not because they have a technical difference of opinion. They're going to have a social difference of opinion. They're going to play the victim card and talk about how they were hurt, their feelings were hurt by the other group. And this could be a powerful new mechanism to establish some social cohesion for your fork. That's a genuine attack vector. And the interesting thing is that it happens in Bitcoin. Because when I started with Bitcoin, I've always noted that, I mean, this is a no bullshit community. It doesn't matter what your background is, or your sexual preference, or your color. All these things don't matter. Bitcoin is like that. That's super cool. I mean, if you drop some bullshit, you will be told that it's bullshit. Yeah. And that's, I love that about Bitcoin. So when this happened last week or 2 weeks ago, I was actually pretty amazed that it was so effective. And that's because people are not aware of it. They don't see that this card is being played, that it's something that you can actively do. I'm pretty sure that the person who started it has a background in gaming, knows the power of this argument. And yeah, most Bitcoiners were not aware of the effect of this argument. Hopefully that has changed a little bit now.
Yeah, very interesting. Yeah, and it really could happen here, especially in combination with like changes to the code base, right, as this is a social consensus system. Yeah.
No, and there is a thing, there's always this thing on the background, and you as an economist, that's really interesting. I mean, Bitcoin is a tool it's a defensive tool, like you said. It's not a tool to create equality of wealth.
No.
But this whole equality thing is one of the base arguments of, I mean, you make me feel bad, not because of what you say, but because of what you have. How about that? I mean, you started in Bitcoin earlier, so you're from the generation that has 1,000+ Bitcoins. For instance, I can never do that. That means I can never be equal to you. You do that to me, because, I mean, can you imagine how powerful that is?
And you know, the thing is, it's a correct argument, because this is actually wealth redistribution. Yeah. This is the Cantillon effect. Yeah. Those who receive newly issued money first benefit at the expense of those who gain the money at later. And this is happening with Bitcoin. The early Bitcoiners got Bitcoin at a ridiculous low purchasing power. Yeah. Right? And now the purchasing power is much higher already. Yeah. If we really reach the goal that Bitcoin is trying to achieve,
so it's a genuine argument. Yeah.
It is. But the thing with Bitcoin is, first of all, the monetary rules are well known. Right? It's public rules. Yeah. And we know 21 million, this is the issuance rate, and this is it. Like, it's clear and it's in code, it can be peer reviewed. Yeah. Right? And further, if you run the software, you voluntarily agree to these rules. Yeah. Right? So if you download the Bitcoin Core software and you sync the chain, you actively agree to the set of rules because you verified yourself. Right? Yeah. And in this sense then, anyone can join. It's completely open. Anyone can become a money producer by being a miner. Yeah. And by running a full node. And then further, like, anyone can also enter and be a new part of the system.
Yeah. But you'll never be equal to the ones who were there before you. And that's, I mean, that's something that you have to accept. And to be honest, that looks, you're right, that looks a lot like the millennial that comes out of college with €150,000 college debt and is not able to buy a house in a city because it's unaffordable. It's kind of the same thing. And I mean, it is what it is, but it's, it is something, I mean, it's an argument. Yeah.
And very interesting, the student loan debt I mean, it's a very clever scam, right? Because it teaches the young generation that they are in debt.
Yep.
And what do you do when you're in debt? You inflate the money supply.
Yeah.
Because the purchasing power of the money drops, right? And it's easier to pay back the debt because it's denominated in the shitcoin, right? So all these people that have huge college debts, they are incentivized to support a system that is inflating to the money supply.
Actually, the Dutch government started a campaign a couple of weeks ago where they said we need ambassadors for debt. So we need more people speaking out that it's okay to be in debt. Yeah, that's crazy. But I'm trying to get a grasp of my train of thought, but it was smoking too much. I mean, we're doing this in Amsterdam after all. I mean, what else can you do? It's okay. But no, when you say that when you say something like, okay, I can never be equal, you know, I mean, the Cantillon effect on Bitcoin, the people who are there first, who are mining first, they have access to the biggest parts of the network and also of all available coins. But once you start to learn about the effect of inflation, once you go down the Bitcoin rabbit hole, you will enter that monetary, economic information valley, just to say. And once you get there, you understand, like, okay, the reason that I cannot pay for this house is because there's so much inflation, and all the money is sort of like racing towards these objects that are less vulnerable to inflation. That combined with the decrease of purchasing power of your money leads to this situation. And once you get there, the argument that you weren't there fast enough is not so important anymore, because you start looking the other way. You start looking at the people that haven't come in yet and how you can help them get in there. And then you're part of the community again. But the thing is, and I think that's the reason why this whole discussion was introduced into the Bitcoin community. It's introduced by someone who hasn't been there for a long time. Maybe someone who hasn't gone down to the rabbit hole to this point where they start to understand a basic monetary theory. And I think that's the case. Actually, now that we're talking about it, I want to ask it to the person who's at this conference, by the way. So, that's a very interesting subject.
Yeah. Oh. Well, let's see how it plays out.
Yeah.
I mean, we are, after all, trying to break Bitcoin, and this might be it.
Interesting.
This might be how we break it. So be careful.
Cool, man. Thanks, Max. Awesome.
Well, but, Boris, any last words to the audience? Anything that you still want to get off your heart?
Oh, I just learned something. I just learned that this is the kind of knowledge you get here going to this conference. I just learned, just before I entered this studio space that you guys have here, I learned that back 32 key allows you to make up to a typing mistake of up to 4 characters.
Yes.
I'm like, 4 characters? I mean, I've stayed away from Bitcoin if I was stoned or drunk or whatever, and now I can finally sort of like, it's 4 characters. Perfect. That's a lot.
And you know, even further, there's an algorithm that can tell you exactly where the typo is. So that, like, you could, for example, write software, and there is a implementation out there where you see, okay, you type in the address, and it tells you there's a mistake.
Yeah.
This, for example, Y should actually be a Z. And
Jesus, so it
it tells you, it's autocorrection.
Unbelievable. It's like Tesla's autopilot for people who are drunk behind a computer, fat fingering.
Exactly.
Awesome.
And you know, this is really cool with addresses, and great that we have it.
Yeah.
But for example, Wasabi Wallet, right? They have a automatic password brute forcer, where if you misspell your password, it checks if there is a typo in there by brute forcing, like, with the correct thing of the word.
That's insane, man. I love it that you know all these things. Awesome. Thank you very much.
So we're probably gonna get to the point where we can, like, be drunk, be high at the computer, and
you just think about doing the transaction, and it's gone. The money's gone already.
Perfect.
Awesome.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, Boris, that was great. So your podcast, what is it called? What is it about?
Oh, I do a podcast called Nerd Culture. You were on there a few months ago. I did one with Francis Pouliot 2 weeks ago, I guess, 3 weeks ago. Those are, by the way, the only two ones in English. The podcast is called Nerd Culture, but those particular two podcasts, I mean, we talk about monetary economic theory, about the Austrian School of Economics, which I mean, that's my biggest discovery. I mean, I love the technical aspect and the gameplay theory of Bitcoin, but man, once the Austrian economics were introduced, I was blown away, and especially blown. I mean, I went to college and everything. I never heard anything about this. It's insane. I mean, what kind of society is this where students do not learn where the money comes from? And then I read another fact, and it kind of goes back to this building. Before the abolishment of slavery, it was illegal to educate slaves. And here you go. I mean, you can come out of college and know nothing about Austrian economics, and it's for a reason, guys and girls. Yeah.
It really is, absolutely.
Yeah.
So good that we do the education.
Yeah.
And so you focus more on the technical side then?
No. I want to learn more. That's why I watch all your stuff about Austrian economics. I've read Hayek. I've read Guido Hulsmann. I love that. He's very good. I don't know if you discovered it. There's a podcast by a guy called Guy Swan.
The one who, Guy Swan, the Cryptoconomy.
Cryptoconomy,
right,
yeah, it is Cryptoconomy. You once had a tweet where you said, I use this app for reading out articles. And I tried it and it was a little bit mechanical. You know, I couldn't really get an emotional attachment to the content of the text because it was hard. And then this guy started a Cryptoconomy podcast, a Guy Swan, and he started reading. First, he basically does an audio version of an article about Mises or whatever. And he also does this old school stuff that's hard. You know, you have to usually read it 3 or 4 times before you really understand. But he sort of like gives an interpretation what he thinks it means, and I love that. And I mean, we need more of that. I mean, you do that in your podcast. He does that, and I would like to do something in Dutch like that for the Dutch community. Talk about this and
Yeah, that would be fantastic. I really like the concept as well because it gives you like not just the audio version, which I prefer all the time. I love audio stuff, and then it also gives you, as I say, some additional explanation. To like read a paragraph, then talk about it, or read the whole thing and talk about it after, as Guy does. But the guy, he's great. He had this one explanation of inflation that was based on like a car rental system. And he explains how fractional reserve and inflation and increase of the money supply completely fucks everything up. It's the best explanation and best analogy I've ever heard for inflation and fractional reserve. So definitely check that out. I don't remember which episode it was, but it's in there. So watch all his stuff, and then you'll find it. But it's really good.
It's awesome. That's good. We should do a podcast where we just like talk about other podcasts.
Yes,
it's not a bad idea, actually.
Yep. That
awesome. And then we talk about what they would probably mean in that podcast. But there is a lot of technical stuff that's hard to understand, and there's not a lot of people who are able to explain it well. I mean, that's what I was watching the World Crypto Network for. Like when Jimmy Song was explaining stuff about development, about the way projects are structured. Once you get into when you start with Bitcoin, it's really hard to get some entry points. You know, just like something to hold on to, so you can learn more from there. And actually, I think YouTube podcasts, they are perfect for that. And I love that stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, cool that you do it in Dutch. It's very nice to expand the knowledge base, the archive.
Absolutely, yeah. We should do another one about, I've got more questions for you for Austrian economics.
For sure. Anytime.
Awesome.
We're perfect. Okay, Piers, thank you very much for joining us here today at the Breaking Bitcoin Conference in Amsterdam in the Tulip Mania house. So we're building bubbles again. But the Tulip Mania broke. Hopefully we won't break Bitcoin. Yeah. Piers, thank you very much and see you on the next show. Bye-bye.